Once again, great to have you here. Final one of the weekend, which is always a good one. So we thank you for those of you that have turned up. We know there's always people that tend to come in as soon as the sessions do start. My name's Kitch, and over the next little while we'll be discussing, having followed on so many of the innovations around schools and nurseries, we'll now be looking about getting career ready in high school. We know that high school plays a critical role in preparing students for the transition from education to the workplace, from identifying individual interests to fostering both academic and non-academic skills. Schools have the responsibility to equip students with the tools and resources to succeed in their chosen careers in the future. Join our academic experts in this panel from the leading schools in the UAE as we explore the importance of initiating career readiness in high school, and we aim to discover how local schools can equip children with necessary information and skills to navigate their professional aspirations with confidence and also with clarity. Our speakers we've got for this session, the final one, Mahana Kelkar, the Head of Admissions at the Global Indian International School. Thank you so much. Paul Ryan, the Head of Secondary from Heartland. Thank you for being present. And Ritika Anand, the Principal of the Dira Private School. Round of applause for our speakers, please. Mohana, a simple question to start. How are the schools today helping students to develop the right skills for their future careers? We'll turn this one on for you. All right, there we go. Yours should be working.
So basically the skills that we require to be standards is communication skills, which is very important. And we've seen in COVID times that how communication is very important and hampered during those times. Secondly, we need to see that the children are AI ready. Robotics is one of the things, critical thinking skills. There are research skills which come into picture as well. These are some of the skills that we are thinking.
So it's for those who couldn't hear, robotics, AI, it's training the students now, not just the traditional STEM subjects. It's a lot more of the technology that they need to be equipped with.
Once it comes to skills, the subjects are totally different. Once it comes to skills, these are the skills that they develop.
Would you agree, Paul, they're more of the common skills that are needed to be career ready rather than traditional subjects, the softer skills perhaps as well?
Am I turning stuff on?
Yeah, you're good.
I think the question is interesting. I think the idea of career ready and what kind of careers young people will graduate towards. I think it was around the year 2000, the Australian educationist Edufair put together a series of talks and a presentation and actually his book around the idea of a girl in a class, Angelica, who was 5 at the time. And we were preparing Angelica for a career that we didn't actually know what she might go and do. And I have to admit I was quite critical of that idea at the time. I actually think what you mentioned around there were two disruptors. One was COVID. COVID was a disruptor in terms of challenging some of the orthodoxies around what schools thought they were doing. And some of the way in which we've changed practice is actually really positive. I think the other is disruptive technology. It may be that our young people go into work that's quite traditional, they become engineers and doctors, for example. The way in which that work is carried out will be transformed over the next 20 or 30 years. And AI and disruptive technologies, while they might not change the careers that children do, it will completely transform the way in which they carry out those careers. So I think the focus on transferable skills and the focus on the capacity for future learning are probably more important now than they ever were. I do think something you said about subjects is important though. It remains fundamental that schools teach children the bedrock of young people and those who go off to graduate, the foundations of the subjects that they will go to study. So if you're going off to do chemistry, it's important you are a good chemist by the age of 18. So we mustn't discount knowledge in this piece, but I do think the idea of transferable skills in a disruptive work community in the next 15 years is going to be.
Just holding with you on that point, Paul, one of the discussions we've had over the past couple of days is the challenge in finding the balance. So obviously you want to be a chemist and you need to know the basis of chemistry, but then there's also the need to be job ready, to have the latest innovations, and sometimes the school leaders are at the forefront of industry because they're equipped with more technology than rusted, hardened-on people in the industry who don't want to change. How hard are you finding, the schools finding, to keep that balance?
I think until now it's been relatively simple to do because we've been in front of children. I think we're seeing the period where children are now in front of us in terms of technology. We're concerning ourselves in school about the use of AI, and the children are already using it in ways that we don't understand. And I think we're at that really interesting point, and where tension and opportunity comes, that we need to think very deeply about how AI will transform some aspects of schooling. So, for example, can we rely on pieces of work done outside of the classroom in any meaningful way anymore? Can we rely on externally completed assessment in schooling outcomes? Given the challenges with detecting whether or not a piece has been authored by an individual, given the amount of AI out there, and does it actually mean we'll end up back in more traditional routes of examination, that the weighting on exams being heavier than they've ever been before? And I don't think we know the answers to that yet, but it's an interesting time.
Yeah, I think we may even get into that topic towards the end of the session. Ritika, thank you for being patient. You're the principal of the Dira Private School. We mentioned how students are now sometimes at the forefront when they're coming in and perhaps teaching teachers. Are students aware of this situation? Are they aware of the impact of when they're trying to get through that week, that month, that year, but do you think they're aware of it when they leave school at 18? They need to have these extra skills rather than base subjects?
Yes, absolutely. And it is also therefore the job of the parents and the schools to make sure that, they all become aware if they aren't already. Because especially in Dubai, being a large expat population, parents are coming in at different times of the year from different places. They have different experiences prior on education, what it looks like, what they want for their children. And when they come to Dubai, which is a hot pot of so many cultures, so many expectations, and a country which is very aspiring. So that changes the perspective of so many parents, who might traditionally not be looking at that. So it's the responsibility, I believe, of the schools. See, in my 20 years of being in Dubai, I started my career as a chemistry teacher for AS and A level. And then I went down to leadership into the schools, and I'm looking at whole school now. So it is very important that schools focus on developing holistic personalities in their students right from the younger age. For example, softer skills, resilience, which is very important for them to see through when they're having difficulties in examinations, or as they grow into the field outside. They would be challenged so many times with not being successful in the first go. So teaching that balance of softer skills, communication skills, collaboration, financial literacy, knowing how to manage your own self outside. So those are one of the few of the things where, children who are very academically bright come back home because they're not able to manage their independent lives outside the country without their parents' support or things like that. So as schools, we need to be very aware. We need to be aware of our cohorts. We need to be aware of, are these just ready to get into university, the secondary part of the school? They're in the middle, so what could possibly be happening? So as I said, disruptive technology is already bringing them in. Children from FS are learning about coding and programming right now.
Yeah.
So that's where the schools need to go. They need to keep track of all of this together as an individual and give them that facility to make them successful. And adding to that, I think which is very important that school and parents need to work at is values. Because we do want them to become responsible, caring, empathetic citizens and not just individuals who are looking for their own path and their own success, but success as a community, success as a society. So sustainability, environmental awareness, giving to the society are also equally important fundamental concepts that need to be built in the schools, I believe.
Yeah, but do some students find that overwhelming? If they've got to take in so much, how hard is it as teachers and as educators to find the balance in the curriculum? Because it seems like each year there's a new innovation or there's a new holistic method that's added to the curriculum.
Yeah, so that's the part of the curriculum review process that is very crucial every year, to keep abreast of what the children need in order to be successful, and also at the same time to gauge the interest of the generations as they're becoming younger and younger and looking at many other things. So for example, we can't tell them now not to have devices, we can't tell them now not to use technology, or you can't use this, this thing, but it's how to use it with responsibility. That is very important for us to teach. So therefore, there is this continuous work going on, and yes, it's a lot for educators to do. I wouldn't say any educator would feel, oh, it's a piece of cake nowadays, because there are a lot of things that we need to get ready. But as I said, we are preparing our children for a future, for careers we don't even know anything about as yet. So the best we can do is give them a very broad base of fundamental skills in all areas and values, so that they become those ready reckoners and able to learn on their own and grow on their own, adapt.
Yeah, thank you, Ritika. You'd be aware, some people may not be aware, it was touched on in the last session, that when many students graduate, for the ones that are in kindergarten, 65% of all the jobs haven't even been created yet. So it's a scary prospect. On that view, Mahana, what are you doing in terms of mentorship or in terms of work placements or internships? Is that the best way still to bridge that gap between the school and the workplace?
Absolutely, it is very important for the students to be having good internship opportunities.
Yeah.
And also, we keep meeting a lot of families and students who have no idea about subject choices or internship opportunities or getting employable in the future. They come to us saying that, you know what, my friend has taken this and I would like to go and take this. And or maybe it's just in right now, so I would like to go and do that. But then it is our responsibility to tell them, to educate them, empower them, and spend their summer holidays in a much better way, engaging themselves into some internship opportunities for maybe 3 to 4 weeks, or doing something.
Realistically, how easy is that to tell a student when they need to take their summer holidays?
But they do. At least most of them do. So it's our responsibility to at least tell them about it. And also one more thing, I feel that high school students must have one hobby and one sport in their life. That is also one thing we always want the parents and the students to do.
Is that for balance, for holistic
Not
learning?
balance, but in university what happens is how you spend your free time in university is very important. And if you don't have engaging things going on, then they end up doing the things they shouldn't be doing either, or they fall into bad company. It's just too many possibilities.
Do the schools assist?
Well,
Do the schools assist on all those mentorships or placements, or
Yes.
is it becoming part of the curriculum as well?
It is. So we have a career counselor. I think most of the schools do have career counselors on board. And they do this mentorship, profiling of the students, giving them the good opportunities to identify universities, scholarships, etc. Yeah.
Paul, how are you working with students to help decide on the right career path?
With all these mentorships, and sometimes it's up to the students to, they've got all these options, but how do you help them kind of break down and make a calculated decision?
Yeah, I think that's part of the challenge we're facing at the moment. Some of the things that I think are important is to go early. I think to think that career planning and university guidance begins at the age of 16 is wrong. That needs to be brought down earlier within the British system. Children start to take their options at the end of year 9, so at the age of 14. So actually bringing your careers guidance program down to 13 and 14-year-olds. So you're starting to have those meaningful discussions around. At that stage, course selection will not define you, but what it can do is make a potential outcome more difficult to achieve. And it can just mean you have to take a slightly different route. So bringing those discussions very early. You're absolutely right that we all have our careers guidance counsellors. Each week we run a Tuesday session where we have somebody that's actually a member of our parent body or somebody that we know in the city comes in and talks about their career path and what they actually do. Much of what we find with children is they want to do a particular role until they find out what the person who does that role actually does. We have career sessions every Tuesday morning where we invite children from year 9 up, so from the 14-year-olds up, to come and listen to somebody from industry or particular profession. Usually my voice is quite loud and I wouldn't need this, but today, as you can hear, I'm a little bit hoarse. The other thing is the good use of technology. There are two software platforms, BridgeU and the other one that I can't remember now. It's the one we actually use. No,
In one of the
Edufair. Thank you. So what Unifrog will do is you put it in front of a 14-year-old and they can just type in everything they think they like to do, the subjects they like to do, what they like to do in their spare time. And there's a little bit of AI behind it. And then it will start to generate a profile of the kind of pathways that might be suitable for somebody who has these likes and dislikes. It will take you through some psychometric character questions, and then it will start to say, okay, you could go to Monash, or you could go to the Dutch universities, you could go to the US. Have you thought about Canada? And it will start to give you your prerequisites, and it will start to direct you towards potential course options. And so bringing that piece of software down into the early years begins to sharpen people's ideas around what they want to do. And then absolutely what you're saying was right around, there's some curriculum choices we need to make, but there are also the ethos of your school. Do you insist that children continue to do extracurricular so that they can experience defeat, so that they can develop that resilience you were talking about in a context that's character building and forming rather than destroying? Because it's important that they have opportunities where they don't get their own way, particularly children who do particularly well over time and maybe have never faced defeat. So extracurricular, sport, interests outside of the classroom, so that they can develop and not become narrow, but also so that they can experience defeat. And sport is a key one for that. It's not everybody can do.
Yeah, and it also comes down to teaching, I don't know, lifestyle, all right. Also, sport comes down to, work with timelines, work with teams and losing and coming back a winner the next week, hopefully preparing. But opening up to the three of you, what about the input? We've got the software and the mentorships and all the opportunities that are available for students. But what about the pressure from the family and the parents as well? How do you as a school cope if you've got this and a child starring in chemistry, but there's this pressure to go to Stanford that comes in as well that you're having to work with?
Absolutely, and I think the pressure is both from the parents sometimes, and sometimes when the parents are understanding the students themselves are very, very aspirational and competitive, and they've set their goals and they just want to go there to the top universities. So the career counseling, as we've been talking about, and then speaking to these leaders at school and speaking to other alumni who've gone through the same kind of process, these kind of interactions then help to build that awareness. If it's the parents who are over aspirational, or maybe the child wants to pursue psychology but they want them to be a doctor, or especially in a community like Dubai where parents are primarily a lot of Asian parents and they have their STEM goals and their own aspirations that they want their children to become. So we do need to have a lot of counseling sessions for the parents sometimes, and even sometimes for the children, because they don't have a plan B. And it is very important for them to have a plan B and sometimes even a plan C. Because at the end of it, it's an exam on a day, and anything can happen on that day, and your results can go whichever way they are going. And when you're applying to a university who may have traditionally taken children with those grade levels, but the competition is only increasing year by year, and the entry level requirements are becoming much more competitive. So that's why I think the focus of all of these schools with higher secondary students is to give them that edge, the edge which comes with all of these other extracurriculars, the edge which comes with a strong mental framework, emotional framework, as well as along with the academic framework and the skill set that we've been talking about. So it's not something that schools can do on a day, like a career day, and finish it there, because it is something which is an ongoing process right from when they are entering middle school and talking about it. In fact, our school does, and I'm sure many others do, we have a talk around dreams and aspirations right from the onset. It's something that we do in the primary schools, even in the FS. We introduce them to career days, or people coming with their uniforms, or the Dubai police or the fire brigade, to get them to know about people with different professions. And they start having their affiliations set in, sometimes with the context of the parents' aspirations, sometimes what they like, something they see in a movie perhaps. So there's so many factors which are making an impression on a young child's mind. And this is what we need to hone, need to look for, need to build up, need to guide right from the onset when these children are preparing on their journey. And having portfolios is a very important aspect, whether you build it through Unifrog as when they get older, but even younger, having a simple book to start with and then an online system where they're just logging in what they like doing and what they have achieved and all the certificates there, gives them a sense of self-worth, gives them a sense of what they're good at, all the areas which they may not be good at but might be required for the career that they're choosing for themselves. So all of those kind of discussions are ongoing from a very early age, and it's a collaborative process between the educating team and the parents and the child that we work on this on an individual and group level as well.
Yeah, so really, are you finding if someone puts in what they're good at and where they've achieved, there's also reflective learning? Are they're then able to go back and go, you know, over the first half of this term,
Yes.
I was really good at these subjects,
Yeah.
but I always wanted to do this. Actually, you know what, maybe I should put my focus
Yeah.
towards.
Yes,
Goal setting.
Yeah, sorry. So target setting or goal setting is something which is an ongoing process. It is reviewed during your assessment cycles, and it's okay. Sometimes children start with wanting to do something, and over the time they don't think this is their cup of tea. So they are also looking at similar options, and it is the responsibility of the schools to provide with that information around that area, you know. For example, somebody is very passionate about the field of medicine, but maybe being a doctor is not what they want to be. So they're excellent at AI or technology. So biomedical sciences, bioinformatics, and there are a whole lot of these options available now that you can be in a field that you love, but not be doing the job that was perhaps few years back the only alternative for you to be in that path.
In fact, yesterday, I had a family who walked into us in our kiosk, and they were asking, so she wanted to do NEET. NEET is one of the competitive exams in India for medicine. And I asked her about, why do you want to do NEET? Oh, my friends are going for NEET, so I would like to go there. And then I was explaining, do you know what NEET is, and what's the level of, number of hours of efforts you need to put in. She had no clue about it. And then we explained that, around medicine, there are a few other courses which would be in the same industry, which may be achievable by you. But they did not know that. So the parents also need to be counseled with the students, I think.
Yeah. Further to it, Paul, in your experience, what are some of the common mistakes you think students or families make when it comes to deciding on the right career path?
I don't know how popular I'll be in the room because it's all parents. The big mistake children tend to make is doing what their parents want them to do, and the big mistake parents make is assuming they know what their child should do. What you need there is lots of honesty, and you need to know your children very well, and you need to know the community very well. And if you need to have a conversation, too many times I've sat with parents who say, she's going to do this, and then 2 days later the child's in the corridor going, I really don't want to do that. How do we have that conversation?
Is that one of the hardest things as a teacher?
It's probably, I wouldn't say it's the hardest, it's one of the most challenging conversations, because in this city, in this context, parents are paying a good amount of money for the school to educate their child. They have certain expectations about what their children may go and do. They have certain aspirations and hopes, and children do change their mind. And for a school to undermine the hopes that a family might have, and then a child 2 or 3 years later says, oh no, actually I really did want to do that, but my school let me do something completely different, so I'm not there. So negotiating those discussions and being very honest with parents, but ultimately allowing families to make decisions that they feel are in their best interest. The best we can do is guide, support, and where we need to have honest conversations, but those final decisions do need to be with families.
With the family. Ridhika, you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, I've been working with older children for all my life, except for the last 2-3 years now, because my school is only to middle school now. But there is always that fine line that educators are always walking while they're having these kind of discussions, because you don't want to be the person who has taken away from them a career which they could have probably succeeded in had you given equal opportunity for that parental aspirational to also weigh in while they were making those discussions. Because we've had those later discussions where they've come back doing a course that they were very, very keen on, and they didn't find it giving them what they thought it would give them. So then there are those regrets later on. But the good thing now is that a career is not fixed in today's world. So you can study something and you can change your major in the university. You can study something, finish your graduation, and then do something else altogether. You can also work in a field for some years, do what you want to achieve in that, find it's not meeting your purpose anymore or your aspirations have changed along the way, and switch on to a different career. So that open-mindedness to this from the parents' perspective, students' perspective, and the school is very important. And it is also important for us to realize that we need to give them the right basic skill set. The ability to understand, reflect, evaluate, critically think, and work together to meet that successful goal, whether it is whatever you choose to become. Because you only become successful if you work hard in whichever field or area you might choose to be, right? And if you're resilient and if you can overcome failures. So those are the skills that fundamentally we need to talk. But yes, you always are playing this game of balancing, guiding, stepping back, stepping forth, in order, looking at every individual case is different. Sometimes the children are in real distress because of the pressure the parents have put in, or because their cousin did something, or their sister did something. We've got lots of cases where the elder child is very bright and has therefore set those high expectations of academic achievements in university. And the pressure on the other kids, and they might not even be interested academically. They might be a brilliant sports person or a musician or whatever, but the pressure is so high. And I have personally seen students break down, fall out of school, not being able to complete at all, because your mind is very precious while you are doing all of this pressure intake, and not all children's brains or minds or emotions are yet strong enough. So it's therefore always that balance of the school guidance counselor, the school's career counselor, the academic team, the parents and students. We really need to look at individuals and see who can take what pressure and what aspirations they have, and then how to work together to get onto that path.
Well, we've got three very passionate people here. Any questions? Does anyone have any questions in regards to the education program, teachers, anything? We've got three great people here you can work on. One of the questions I want to have is in regards to those stories about mentorships, about people coming in. How important is it to get people not only to share their industry, someone, as you said, they might want to do robotics or AI, and then they realise actually there's a pathway for me in medicine to do this. And how important is it to get people to share their story about how they wanted to go down a certain path, but due to trauma or tragedy or something, they had to do a complete 180 before they realise where they need to go, that the joy of life, sometimes making a mistake or something goes wrong puts you in the path you were destined to. Is that part of the mentorship program as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think even though we are not a very secondary school as yet, but even we've been getting people from the field, from the industry. Like for example, there was this Emirati gentleman who was an engineer by profession, but he is UAE's or the Middle East only classical singer for Arabic language. So getting people like that who had some other training, but then had there some aspiration or hobby or interest that they wanted to pursue as a passion. Those kind of people, or people with needs, because we are a society where the children with special needs are increasing. So what kind of options are we giving to those parents? What kind of options are we giving to those children? So having people coming to the school who may be having some needs and are successful in their own careers and lives, or authors, or musicians, or sports people, including then bank professionals or doctors or the other traditional job profiles that we have. So making sure your student body is aware and they have this openness to having those discussions with you as a school, that you are there for them, getting them to give that confidence, and then giving them this exposure, whether you take them outside to those places, to factories, to industries, to space centers, to libraries, or whether you have those experts visiting your school as to give them those talks. Parents do lovely career counseling because they all come from a different background. They're all professionals in something or the other. That's a wonderful resource that we have at our schools. So parents, whether through Zoom or they're coming to school, talking to the children, I'm a bank professional, this is what I did, I failed here. Like for example, myself, I have done my PhD in chemistry. In order to start my product, I needed to achieve a certain first product to be done. I failed 11 times. And if I had given it up at that point of time, I wouldn't have been able to achieve. So there are lots of people like us, real people, working with them, whom they can relate to, who can give them this kind of context and understanding and experience, which works far more. And it's very inspiring when children listen to them and they come back and tell us, I want to do this.
It's a little bit of the more traditional values of storytelling and vulnerability.
Yeah.
Children sometimes look at people who are successful and assume they'd always been successful. And when they hear a story and when they see some vulnerability, somebody who is highly successful, who wasn't always highly successful, who faced challenge, they understand in their own context that.
Yeah, exactly my point. Because I was teaching chemistry to ASN level, and they said, "Oh, Miss, you have a PhD and you know everything, so you have all the right answers." But then I had to tell them, no, I didn't have all the right answers, and in spite of whatever I had done, I still failed at so many places.
Yeah.
So that connectivity, relativity, the experience of real life, real people, real stories, and not just us, many other people.
I know, I can sense your passion, yes.
Yeah, also when entrepreneurs come in, usually entrepreneurs are people who are doing something totally different from what they have learned probably, and to learn from them, then how do they actually start on the journey? What was their, and the failures are always there for entrepreneurs. I think it's
talk about learning through failure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And sometimes entrepreneurs talk about failing better. and learning each time that they come through. Touching on what you said, Paul, what's the reaction from students where you're seeing where someone comes in who's got the appearance of being successful and they share their story and they go, I failed here, this didn't work, I failed here, and it took me a few hits to rebound to become great.
You see surprise. I was having a conversation with a year 10 boy there in the week, and he was talking about he didn't need a career because everybody he knew who was successful didn't have a career. And I was trying to think what that meant for him, and he was saying, but they've got wealth and they haven't got a career. And so, do you want to go away and do some research and come back to me about how they developed that wealth? And he came back the next day and went, oh, they had careers beforehand. So there's an assumption that you do one thing, you design an app, you make lots of money. And I think what you have to do is you have to gently erode some of those assumptions that are misplaced. And you have to put stories in the context of children's real experience, and you have to repeat that significantly over time in order for that to become knowledge rather than a soundbite that somebody's giving you. I agree with you, it's not a career day that you do and then you've done that. It's about the consistent stories of those who've been successful and those who haven't, particularly those who haven't and were. And role models that individuals can connect to. There might be something about their story, their background, their setting, or something about the challenges they face that they can see a connection in. We always know we've had a successful, we call it breakfast clinics, we always know we've had a successful careers clinic on a Tuesday, when the children leave and half a dozen stay to speak to the speaker.
Yeah.
Because they just want to ask them, when that happened to you, and when you made that change, or when you decided you didn't want to do that and you wanted to do this, can you tell me more about that? So I don't think, again, there's no, if there were a single response to it or a single answer, I'd stop doing this and I'd go around the world selling it to schools. I think it's about having a consistent program over time, having that program as varied as it can be, lots of honesty and lots of compelling stories that children can connect.
It's funny, when I'll get to your question next, because when I went back and went to a high school and spoke about my career as a radio announcer and my failings, all the class wanted to stay back, and I thought, oh, this is good. I've made a breakthrough. They just wanted to know more about the famous people I've met. So, didn't have much to do with me.
That happens.
Yeah, as well. You got a question?
Yes, we're starting our academic career here in Dubai, and I wanted to know if you have this knowledge. Do they do a career aptitude test in the school settings here?
So depends on the age of the child. Depends on the age of the child that the child is entering into. Most schools do have some kind of a preliminary assessment while they take children in. Many schools also use what we have the cognitive ability test, the CAP4, which is a GL-based test, which is a cognitive test and not connected to any curriculum background or anything. So they use that primarily as a guiding light to understand the skill sets or which cognitive ability is stronger or needs help in, or where the child is. But then as they grow into secondary, different schools have got different ways of working around this. But there is some or the other program already in place in our secondary schools in Dubai, which would be guiding and then assessing the children on a more career-oriented skill understanding and assessment profiles. So it depends again where your child is, what is the age and what they are doing.
I think career profiling is challenging because young people change over their journey through school. Also, it would make an assumption that the school is then able to define a pathway for somebody, and we need to be mindful not to do that. So I think you're looking at aspects that you have already, which is their academic progress, how well they're doing across their subjects, their character, their involvement in extracurricular activities. And then you can start to look at the pieces of software like Edufair that will start to give you career profiling based on interest. So they don't ask directly, they ask indirect questions and then begin, what do you like, what do you enjoy doing, what do you do in your spare time, what subjects do you enjoy, what do you enjoy about those subjects. And from those questions, they'll begin to generate some potential pathways, but it remains very broad at the age of 14, 15, 16. I think we want to avoid narrowing children's choices and funneling them into something that might not actually be their interest too early. So I think it's about having a range of information you have about a young person, and then about knowing them and having open discussions.
Any other questions? Anyone? Got one? Yes.
What are your thoughts about the students using AI for assignments, and how will you guys adapt in this?
Well, if you put into ChatGPT or OpenAI, have you produced this assignment? It will tell you whether or not it's produced it or not. We don't tell the children that. I think it will radically transform schooling. It will, for example, I'm a history and geography teacher, and if I wanted children to look at some models of exemplary responses to certain stimulus, certain questions, I either need to have them from previous pupils, or I need to write them myself. Or today I could go into ChatGPT and ask them to give me 5 responses at different grades to a particular question, to an A-level history question. And ChatGPT will give that to me in about a third of a second. If I wanted a program of study for 6 weeks for a certain year group on a particular topic, broken down into 8 different lessons with assessment of 2 points, pieces of AI will give teachers that in 2 or 3 seconds. So it will change the way in which teachers can generate material, can generate programs of study, and can think about curriculum development. And more profoundly, it will alter the way in which we have to think about the validity of student responses that aren't generated in front of us. But we have to think more creatively than that, and we actually have to work out a way that we can use the technology in a really creative way to support children to do great work. And so we have to stop thinking about it as a threat,
Exactly.
as an opportunity.
Yeah, I would just give a context. It's just about like 30 years back thinking computers are going to be damaging. They will take away from the learning. It's the same thing about calculators being allowed in mathematics exam. So we've gone over all of these revolutions, and AI at this point of time stands to be that transformative revolution. We have to think of ethical ways to use AI in teaching and learning. And it's not just about students at school, it's about what's happening at universities as well. And there is where they're going to just come out into careers. So how much is their independent work and how much is it work from the AI? All those contexts have greater relevance there. Our children are still younger, they would get time to grow over it, and we would find ways to work with it and overcome the negative points around it. But it is something to be embraced, I feel, like all technology changes and all transformations, but with always understanding where to put a limit and how to use it in the best interest. And that's not just AI or ChatGPT. The bigger threat, and I'm sure school teachers would agree, the biggest threat to students is the unsupervised or supervised use of social media. They're getting more damage done to them by using apps that are not meant for them, and reaching out to content which they shouldn't have had, and parents need to supervise that at home. It's okay, you need to supervise, because we deal with students where they go through greater turmoil and pressure and unnecessary exposure to absolutely unsafe content through all of that, rather than ChatGPT or any of these AI tools that we're talking about.
Yeah, it's a tough time for students also, with the pressure that they've got on them. But further to the point you made initially, Paul, we've got AI, we need to work with it, we need to embrace. But sometimes when it comes to testing or the end of exams, you make the point of we may have to go back to the start, go back to traditionally writing essays in exams, or going back to giving standing up and giving a presentation. Is that what you're more looking at? So it's got to be done in the moment, so it hasn't been plagiarised from somewhere.
I think that's some thinking we need to have. I think the days of coursework, essays that have been completed at home and submitted, if we assume that they're not being in some way constructed, informed, or even written through pieces of disruptive technology, as educators, then we're ignoring the reality. Then how do we have valid, consistent, and reliable assessment if we're unsure around the access to those technologies? So I think to move back to 3-hour exams, 3 essay questions, I think wouldn't quite be right, but I think you're right around some of the ways in which presentations, the building of the presentations of models of excellence in certain areas. We're not an IB school, and I hesitate to say it because my principal won't like it, sorry for you. Some of the aspects of TOK, for example, within the IB, where if they move from an essay into the presentation of your ideas that you then are interrogated on and you have to discuss. I think the movement towards assessment that is both soft and hard, but in the moment, I think is likely the direction of travel over the next decade.
If I would just add to that a bit,
Yeah.
because again, the assessment system varies from curriculum to curriculum. So for example, the British curriculum has traditional tests at the end of the GCSEs and at the end of the ASNA level. There is no threat of an AI unless they get wired or something and they bring it there, right? So an Indian curriculum as well is still very traditionalistic in its assessment systems. So yes, but as a community of educators, that balance needs to be kept in mind and thoughtful understanding of how assessments would proceed in different conditions, keeping all of this AI is important.
Any final questions from anyone before we finish up? Just lastly on the preview, final thoughts. If you were to give one piece of advice to a student and a family, starting with you, what do you think? What do you think would you give? As if you can simplify it.
One piece of advice.
Yeah.
That's challenging. But I think listening carefully to your own wards or students is important.
Paul, anything?
I don't think it changes over time, despite what changes around the environment. Follow your passions.
Follow your passions.
I think facilitating, very important, getting them to explore, giving them the opportunities to experience different things, because that's only when they would know what works for them or what they like doing. If they don't get that exposure by the family or by the school, then they would have very limited experiences and they would not be able to then perhaps make a more informed choice.
Wonderful. Well, it's been a great session. Please give a round of applause to our speakers. The Global International School, Paul Ryan, the head of a secondary Heartland, and Ritika Anand, the principal of the Adira Private School. Finishes up Golf News as Edufair, the special focusing on schools and nurseries. We'll see you with the next Edufair Golf News. Thank you very much.